Finally, the Badgers get a victory and are become bowl eligible. And boy, did we need this one. We get into all things Nebraska, and we're finally reaching Axe Week. What's going to happen next week? We'll find out soon. It's the Bucky Report.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome into the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajeev and Justin, in for our Sunday full episode, live episode, to talk about the week that was. Finally, Justin, we have beaten the Nebraska Cornhuskers. We have retained the Freedom Trophy. We are finally back in the win column. And for the 22nd year, I think it's 22nd year in a row, we are going to a bowl game. How are you, my friend, this Sunday evening?
We showed a pulse. I was happy to see it. There's the heart. They're pushing on our chest right now, trying to get it stabilize us. But yeah, we showed a little something. I honestly, man, I was livid early in this game, and I will take my lumps for it. I was excessively angry with how the first two drives went, which I think most people were. There was a lot of bad play on those first couple of drives. And they snapped out of it. I'm glad to see that we did snap out of it because, man, they needed this. This was a growth moment. And I don't want to make too much of it, but I want people to kind of realize, hey, we haven't seen this kind of fight from this team this season very often. And there were times in that third quarter and early fourth quarter where the defense looked downright aggressive and assertive running around out there. And we haven't seen much of that this season. So it was nice to see some fight from this team as something that we've really struggled to get out of them.
I wish, if you could see the text between Ryan, Justin, and I during the game in the first half, the amount of F-bombs that this guy next to me drops about it was comical at one point because it was like, well, it's 7-0. It's going to be 14-0. It's going to be 21-0. And it was just constant. The pure hatred for what was happening on the field was palpable. But let's get things kicked off, Justin, with our 3 takes of the week. I'll hit this one first. Number 1 for me, the heart and desire that we saw in the second half, especially from the defense, is exactly what we have been waiting for all year long. That's number 1. Number 2, the defense is not getting enough credit for what it's doing in second halves. We're generally just not talking about the defense enough as far as I'm concerned. And lastly, our defense in basketball will be the reason we do not go as far as we want to go this season. These are my 3 takes, Justin. Hit me with yours.
Number 1, super gritty performance from multiple players. Kind of the people who have carried us most of this season were the usual suspects that turn this into a win for us. I will step up a little bit on your defensive take for the football team and say the defense in general is not being enough credit overall for the season of what they've accomplished. They haven't been a bad defense. They lack star talent and guys who are capable of making plays consistently.
They've been good outside the first 5 minutes of every game,
Situationally, we're not a great defense. And Ryan and I talked about that on his podcast, where I said we struggle in 3rd and long. Like we're better at 3rd and 5 or shorter than we are legitimately at like a 3rd and 11, because for whatever reason, we just have people running free left and right against us in those situations. And it makes no sense. Like it's obvious passing downs. But outside of that, I'm going to step on my 3rd one. I'm going to go basketball too. John Blackwell is a bad man.
Yes,
I love watching that kid play, and I talked about it during the game. I was tweeting a little bit. He just has such good instincts. I watch him play, and he looks like somebody who's like a junior, the way he plays out there, because there's very few situations where he forces something stupid or makes a bad play because he's trying to do something that he shouldn't. On the other hand, you look at Storr, who tends to force a lot of shots and things like that and take bad shots because he relies on his athleticism so much. Blackwell's athletic, and he doesn't do that at all. And that's one of those things. That's what will turn him into a very, very good player in a couple of years, because he's going to get more explosive, and he's going to get to the point where he's going to be able to really dictate what he does in basketball games.
Yeah, he's been a real pleasant surprise, and it's nice to see. But we're going to get to basketball a little bit before the show's out.
So. We got a very big game to talk about.
Yeah, so. Yes, we do. But yeah, we're gonna talk about Nebraska a little bit. We're gonna do our we're gonna talk a little bit about the consecutive bowl streak and what that means to us. We'll get into our weekly superlatives. Finally, something nice to talk about in that department, and then we'll do a quick Big Ten roundup and talk about some Big Ten basketball. So the Nebraska game, let's get into that a little bit. We went down early again, 14-0. Let's start there, because that, I mean, geez, like honestly, I've just never felt so helpless as a Badger fan. Obviously, I'm always helpless. What can I do? But it's just the way you feel. It was disgusting. I mean, just to see Nebraska go down the field, like just shred our defense like butter. I mean, go right through it.
Watching a third-string quarterback just take off running for a 55-yard touchdown.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Like, are you kidding me?
The angles that were taken were bad. I know you guys talked about this on the reaction show at Locked On too. The angles were horrible, and it just looked like we weren't even trying. He literally just ran right through the defense, and then to give up another touchdown right off the back of that after a really good defensive
second
play.
and 20.
Yeah, exactly. And then you just giving up touchdowns, and then I mean Ricardo Hallman with a horrible missed tackle, just wrap the guy up. I don't know what you're trying to do. All that together, we're down 14-0. And normally, Justin, we see the second half is when the defense decides to just stop allowing any points. But we stepped up on the very next drive on a big 4th and 1 that kind of really got us going. But I got to say, my big takeaway is the heart. It was there. I just felt like the guys wanted to play. And I think that 4th and 1 was a big point for us, because had we gone down 21-0, had they just keep scoring, we would have just been deflated. But we got the play when we needed it. And all this team needed, Justin, was more confidence. And we got it. Like, look at how much better we played when we actually were confident that we could get the job done. As soon as we go down 14-7, I'm thinking, okay, we can win this game now, because I do think we're a better team. Now, it was very close, but we're not good, but we're better than Nebraska, I think. Nonetheless, we were doing what it took to win. And you could just see the light switch. I think instantly this looked like a different team from when you compare it to the Indiana game, Northwestern game, and the first quarter of this game, versus the way we looked against Ohio State, the way we looked against Illinois in the second half, against Iowa for some of that game. Like, all those things, it just looked like a new team. So big credit goes to the defense for me and what they did in the second half, or really after that 14 points. But geez, you start like that, you're just the heart palpitations go crazy. But big gritty win, overtime win. We're going to get into more of that, but that's my quick take right away. The heart that we showed was so great to see, honestly. And that's all we want. We know we're not an amazing team, but just give us the effort, and good kudos to the guys for doing it.
Yeah, I'll agree 100%. Like I said, there were stretches in that third quarter where the level of effort that I was seeing from the defense, and it is a limited defense. Like, there's not a lot of athletes on this defense, and you saw guys flying around and making plays, and that was really good to see. There's some issues here that we've talked about kind of ad nauseum at this point. The middle linebackers aren't very good. Like, we are not athletic. And Jordan Turner, this is a game that I think he probably wants to burn the game film in, because you're watching
led the team in tackles.
You're watching a quarterback outrun him consistently around the edge. I mean, that shouldn't be happening. But yeah, Allegro, I think we could talk about that kid all day.
Oh yes,
athletically, he's going to be something special. And I think if he was better in his run fits, I bet you he'd be starting already. But it's pretty clear that athletically they want him on the field. It's just that mentally they're not quite there with him, and they're afraid that he's going to make a mistake that's going to cost them. And with a defense that's already making mistakes, I think you try to limit it where you can. But yeah, the physical talent there, he was a find. He was a guy that Wisconsin didn't offer until the new staff came in. And one thing I'll take away from the staff is they seem to really be good in their evaluations. And it's been a bit since we've had a linebacker with that type of athleticism. And if he turns into a star, I think he's capable of being. He's a guy who really looks like he can move in the middle of that field really well at middle linebacker. I was kind of not a huge fan of the idea of him being a middle linebacker at first, but I do, with his athleticism, I think it's actually a plus with his ability to kind of rove there, especially in like passing downs if he has to drop. he's a guy that can cover a lot of ground and very quickly. So I think that's a plus there that we haven't seen from a middle linebacker in a while.
Yeah, most definitely. I'll get a few comments in here. Brian Scott says, I can't get on the team. They proved to me they had hit rock bottom. They had a lot of good players hurt, and I think the basketball team is getting better. It's great to be a Badger fan. Brendan O says, Rajeev, we need you back on Locked On. I still go on there, try to go on there once a week. I'll always be a part of Locked On, and Justin and I and Ryan are always going to be connected like that. But yeah, the reaction show was difficult. I actually was having a date night with my wife, and I couldn't do the reaction show, but I'll always try to pop
priorities, man. Priorities.
I know. Dan, grab. What the hell's going on out there? Dark Ray says Leonard had a bad defenses with more talent. This defense is very limited, but has been solid. Let's talk about the defense. Let's get into this a little more, Justin.
Yeah.
I am super impressed. I mean, the beginning of the Indiana game, the beginning of the Northwestern game, were about as atrocious as our defense has looked all year, and maybe as atrocious as any Badger defense has looked in 20 years. It's really bad. But the fact that they continued to make adjustments and Tressel's understanding what he's seeing, I think the biggest question is, why aren't we more prepared for it? I think that's one of the things that's a discussion point. But once they realize what's happening, I mean, Chubba Purdy never really hurt us again with his legs on big plays. We never got in those big plays again. We actually did tackle better in the secondary. And when Hunter Wohler left, you thought, geez, we're done. But listen, that defense stepped up, even without their best player, by far the best player. I think on the team, they played well. They allowed virtually no points until the very last field goal. They did an amazing job in overtime. I mean, I give a lot of credit to this defense, and they've been much maligned the way you watch the game and you think, geez, look at how many points they're giving up to Northwestern Indiana. What do you think is happening at the beginning of the game and then the adjustments that you're seeing? Credit goes to that, but the early part is certainly concerning.
For whatever reason, Tressel doesn't like to get super aggressive early on. I don't know if he's afraid of getting burned, but I mean, it's either death by 1,000 cuts or it's you're going to get hit on a big play. And in this game, we actually got hit by big plays because we weren't as aggressive. There's issues with this defense in general. I don't know if it's just guys settling in, because we've seen a lot of missed tackles, and I struggle to put that on scheme when we see guys missing plays that are there to be had.
It's like only happening in the beginning of the game.
Yeah. Well, it seems, and that could be just settling in. Like guys just aren't locked in, and then mentally they kind of get synced in. And I think that might be one of those things where when you don't have studs, that's what happens. You know, it's been a minute since we've had a defense that was really porous. I mean, I can't remember the last. 2018 was probably the closest thing, and the linebackers were excellent on that team, bar that the defensive line was really the shortcoming.
It's crazy to think about how porous they are, because you're right, they are porous, but yet they're not giving up any points in the second half. I mean, again, we're playing bad teams. We need to talk about that. Like, that is Indiana, Northwestern, and Nebraska. They're not good teams, but still, like, it's nice to see that they're stepping up and they're doing it. Now, rather than that happening at halftime, it happened in the second quarter when that 4th and 1, I think that was in the second quarter. That's really where things turned, and then they just never got another point again. Nebraska, I mean, gosh, those guys got to be hurting. You're up 14-0 with a chance to finally beat the Badgers for the first time since 2012, and this happens. Like, boy, I'm glad I'm not a Husker.
How do you feel about this? Because my take on this is that Rule cost them the game. Like his lack of aggression with that roster, and I think that that's something you have to do if you're him. The exact thing that Fickell did with us is what Rule should have been doing with them. And they should have been more aggressive rather than running clock. Like he did a terrible job of clock management in this game. And seriously, it cost them so much.
You're 100% right. My take is Rule did cost him. And it's not just Rule. I think it's the whole coaching staff. I mean, look, the Badgers have a really tough time stopping the run. Okay. Especially when you're running between the tackles. Why do they not do it more? I mean, I'm sorry, but we were getting shredded and they were going to get 4 to 5 yards of carry. They didn't run enough as far as I'm concerned, but I'm fine with that. And gosh, the clock management, what are you doing? They pissed away timeouts in the first half. Then they had a horrible clock management in the end of the second half. Like, you could have scored it. You could have gone for a touchdown. You're driving. Like, what are you doing?
He crossed the 50 and just basically let the clock run. And I'm like, what are you doing?
That's obviously the thing when you're down 3. Like, a lot of teams do that, right? I mean, that's obviously that's why it's nice to be up 3 rather than being up 4 in situations like that, because then, yes, a field goal ties it, but if Nebraska needed a touchdown, I think they could have got it. Okay, I think they really could have got it there. They would have.
We were on our heels a little bit, and then they took it off their foot off the gas.
So I mean, but again, the credit goes to the defense, and I think it's just a lot of good signs coming out of there. But let's talk about the offense a little bit. Mordecai obviously had a pretty good game. 160 yards, a touchdown, no turnovers being the big thing. He put the game on his shoulders, I think, in many respects, and running the ball, he did well. Look, and I'm on record as saying this. I will continue to be on record as saying I want Braelon Locke to be the starter right now. I don't want Mordecai out there. But believe me, if he's going to be out there, I'm going to cheer for him, and I'm going to respect the decisions and be proud of it. And I think he played a good game. He deserves credit. He's ultimately, I think, the reason we won that game. And overall, I think we did exactly what we needed to do. We finally got over the hump of just not being able to score touchdowns, and we actually were able to push it in. And I think credit's it's where it's due. I think he played a really good game, and he deserves that. He deserves the praise.
I compared him to Stave in the podcast, the post-game podcast with Ryan. And I think that actually, when I now looking at it, is kind of what I see with him. Like, he doesn't do anything exceptionally well. He's just kind of the calming influence of the offense for the most part. Like, you'd like to see a guy who can do a little bit more in the passing game or do some things, but he always seems to make a play when you really need to have it in most of the games. And if he wasn't injured for a couple of those games, we'd probably pick up at least one more win somewhere along the way. And then we're looking at this as potentially an 8-4 type season, or 7, rather than potentially 7-5, 6-6. And would be nice, but nothing about this is going to come away where we're going to look at the offense and say that this is working this year. It is what it is at this point. We know what it is, but he was gritty. He missed a couple of passes. Like the big one was the one to Pauling, where Pauling laid out and just couldn't reel it in, where he had a couple of steps on the guy, and if he just puts it out there for him to go get it, Pauling's probably still running. And, it stinks that we missed that, but that's kind of what it's been this season. But
he misses a lot of those deep balls, and it's just one of the. Yeah, you're right. Like Stave, I think, had a better deep ball than Mordecai does. He just misses so many of them. But let's get a few comments in here. Slim Lewis says Allegro's 1 out of 11 of a national title contending defense. If the Badgers can get athleticism like that throughout the entire defense, they can beat anybody Fickell can recruit. Go Fickell yourself. Says defense is allowing similar points per game to 2022, despite losing Herbig, Benton, and Torchio. Mike says, so happy about yesterday. Allegro needs to start in the bowl game. Yeah, definitely. Mike also says, was happy to see Quincy getting some more PT. Quincy Burrows. It was a Quincy Burrows sighting, which was nice to see. I mean, he ran a couple good routes, and I think that it's nice to see the opening up that wide receiver room a little bit. We've talked about many times how we want to see other players play. Well, Quincy Burrows got some playing time. Didn't necessarily see offensive linemen and new guys play, but overall, I think the offensive line did okay especially from a pass protection perspective. What do you think about Quincy Burrows playing, and overall, we called for new players. We saw a few. What's your take overall on how Fickell managed the game as far as personnel?
Yeah, I would say the Burrows one was nice to see. I know the staff is super high on him. I expect a lot more from him next year when we get this, or maybe even the bowl game or these last 2 games here. And DK is coming back off of that injury, and I'm sure they're trying to kind of minimize the amount of reps they put on him, given that he's a little hobbled yet. Vinny Anthony did some nice things again in this game. He had a great punt return. He had a huge 3rd down catch for us to get us in overtime down, closer to the end zone. The young guys seem to be picking up some things and making some plays, and that's nice to see. Like honestly, on shock plays on defense, I think Allegro might have been. You could make the argument that he was our biggest player in this game, because he had multiple times where he chased down Purdy from breaking runs down the sideline because he was able to track him and force him out. I mean, the other guys weren't capable of it.
Look at the difference when you see Allegro doing that, and then when you see Peterson or Turner or Getz doing that. It's like it's night and day. I mean, Allegro has so much more athleticism. He's such a plus athlete.
Purdy knew he could not run him. Like he was running out of bounds because when the angle was there, like Allegro was gaining on him. So he was like, I'm getting out.
Yeah, it was good to see that. Mike says, I want Evers more than Locke, Rajeev. I hear that, but I want to see packages with Evers. I don't necessarily think he's ready to start, but Justin, let's pop this one over to you. How many years do you think this air raid offense is going to take to be where we want it to be? That's from Dark Ray. What are your thoughts on that?
It'll be really interesting to see what happens this offseason. I think it's going to take rebuilding the offensive line a little bit. The guys weren't bad in this game, but they're not quite right for what we're trying to do, the offensive line. And I say that because it's showing in both the run game and the passing game. Like the run game isn't what we'd like it to be, and it's kind of across the board. Everything isn't quite right. Like Braelon Allen isn't the type of back you truly want with this type of offense. You just want somebody who's more of a dual threat guy who can really go out there and is elusive and shifty, who, if you get him in space, is a problem for the defense to contain, and a guy who's really adept at slicing through holes and grabbing chunk yards quick. I think it may take a couple of years. I know we're going to get the running backs in probably this next year, and I think that I have high hopes for all three of them, but it's probably going to take them a year to really get their legs under them and be ready to go. The wide receiver room, I don't know what to expect there. I think we're going to probably grab a body or two on that yet going forward. I think we may see some guys leave, depending on how the staff feels about them and how they feel if there's guys that can actually be plus players in this. Like there's going to be some discussions, whether we like it or not. Even with having a nice win like this, the staff's going to have to go and talk to guys who aren't necessarily a fit. And there probably are players who look at it and know they're not a fit for what we're trying to do and are thinking, yeah, I'm out after this. I'll play it out to the end of the season, but are trying to do their best. There's just guys that aren't going to work in this offense, and that's fine. We'll figure it out. I don't know but we can't have just one wide receiver come in who's more of a slot guy and expect that to be a changeover. That they're going to have to get some guys on the outside that can really stretch the field, who are capable of really tracking the ball down to really make some changes here. So we don't really have a burner on this team.
I think ultimately my answer to this question, Dark Rain, thanks you for the comment, is, I think that, first of all, offensive line plays a key role in what is going to happen with Longo's offense. I think that's going to take a little time, clearly. Ultimately, he's had a year to look at this now, and I think that's really important because you coming in the offseason, we're playing against ourselves. You can't really get a good read on everything. Now, Longo, Fickell, and Tressel have had a good time to see, okay, when we're playing real Big Ten opponents, some better than others, what do we look like? How do we really match up? And who's going to work in the system and not? So I do expect this offseason to be a huge piece of what he does and who's coming in the transfer portal, what's going to happen. But I think that's, it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. But I think ultimately it's going to take, a couple years, and hopefully it's all depending on how quickly we see guys come in that we want.
And Mike with the comment here, and it would not be a Badger football game without Jack Nelson pre-snap penalty. I made the comment on the Discord regarding this, stating that if he was a horse, that the owner probably would have put him down by this point and said he was lame. That's dark. I get that, but I don't know what to say at this point. Like you can only say it so many times, like knock it off. Like it's your job to know what's going on and be locked in mentally on this. You need to be more locked in than this.
Yeah, I want to say that I think that the O-line, I know that obviously Nelson had pre-snap penalties. I know that there were horrific snaps by Bortolini, and we have to talk about that. And that's all. It's been a thing all season. But I will give the offensive line credit for the way they did pass protection. I think the overall pass pro was pretty solid. From the running back perspective, we missed a couple assignments there. But I thought overall they gave Mordecai the time they needed. In fact, he had too much time sometimes because he needs to get rid of the damn ball, which I've been saying since I went to the Purdue game. I don't understand why he's not throwing it faster. But Dark Races, I thought Nelson was actually okay yesterday. The penalties are still unacceptable. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think overall,
the penalty, I thought he played all right.
You can't really hate on the line, I think, too much yesterday. But Mike puts up a comment here. What happened to CJ Williams? Thought he would really step up. I agree with you, Mike. I think CJ Williams is a guy that I really liked. And when he has come in there, I think he looks like he has flashes of speed. And I think his route running is pretty solid. He's not getting separation, though. And I think that's the problem. All these receivers, none of them are getting really good separation except for Will Pauling. So I think Tretch coming in next year is going to be a big swing for us in the positive direction. But I agree. I actually would love to see more of CJ Williams, and I'm surprised that we're not seeing more of him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The guys on the outside really haven't truly flashed this year. Green has been the closest thing to it, but there hasn't been anybody that you looked at and like, this guy looks like a dude. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know. Like, I think we get our hopes up looking at a new offense, knowing that it's been explosive. And I realized that you look at some of the things that Longo had done previously. For the most part, most of the teams he went to were pass heavy teams, other than the one that was it Sam Houston that he was at, where they rebuilt it? Trying to remember the one that they went from a run first offense, triple option, to a passing offense. And as far as his time in Power 5, most of those teams were built for passing or had some form of either spread or air raid type scheme that they were running out of. So the personnel was there for what they were trying to do. I feel like there's a lot of guys who just aren't used to what we're trying to do. And there's going to be growth this offseason as the reps become more consistent and the guys get used to what the expectation of this offense is going forward. And I think that your biggest goal, like I said, they need to find somebody that can stretch the field. Like if they can find somebody who can really get deep and do it consistently, it'll make a world of difference for
Absolutely.
them. And there's guys out there. There'll be guys in the portal that are capable of being burners. And I know people will say, well, they had Keontae Lewis, but there's a reason why they didn't lean on him to be that player. Like if the staff thought that he could be an absolute stud for them, he would have been out there. And maybe it's Quincy Burrows. He's got speed to burn.
He does.
Heck, there was a play that he flashed up the seam.
And Mordecai didn't find him.
Well, he had pressure in his face, so I understand to a point. I just thought it was really amusing during the telecast. They were pointing out, oh, look at Will Pauling on this rub road, comes free. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to ignore Quincy Burrows running up the seam with
I thought the same thing. I'm like, you're looking at the wrong – do you see the guy running down the seam wide open? That's where he should have thrown the ball. Totally agree with you. A couple of quick comments here. Brian Scott says, I think Aker could do good at running back. He can catch. Aker, I think, actually had a great game yesterday. I think he really looked good. Mars says, Tressel's defense versus Indiana, Northwestern, Nebraska in the first halves is pathetic. He made their offense look all world. He simply doesn't get the team prepared for inferior opponents. Mars, you're totally right. I don't understand how this happens. And now at this point, I'm thinking, so what happens when we play a better opponent? I mean, when we played Ohio State, we actually were able to stop them early. So it is really surprising to me. I don't know what it is. You're definitely right about, you got to blame the coaches here. There's no one else to blame in that regard.
I'm going to push back a little bit on the last game against Nebraska. It was the first two drives. Outside of the first two drives, we were pretty good on defense.
Yeah, but we got absolutely pummeled on those first two drives.
No, I won't argue that. Okay, but
he's right. What I'm saying is Mars is right. Like you can't do this at the beginning of every game.
I agree. There's something going on there that players are not locked in mentally and ready to go.
And spotting 14 points against Nebraska is unacceptable. It's just, I mean, look, I give the defense a lot of credit, but that is ridiculous.
Part of me leans on that and says it's typically the leaders that you have on that defense that get everyone kind of locked in and ready to go. And I just don't know if we have those guys. And it got better as the game goes on because the coaches are probably leaning on them and really harping. But it seems like there's just not that dude out there other than Wohlers to an extent that's sitting there going, all right, I need to be the one that makes sure everyone's locked in, and I'm going to be the one that's barking at everybody. Because, like, as a player, when guys are out there and they're getting barked at by a coach, like they're susceptible to turning it off and just tuning out. And when it's one of your teammates that's out there, and especially if it's one of the better players, it's harder to tell that guy no or whatever, and you have to deal with the fact that he's probably going to come at you and he's probably going to go to the coaching staff if you're not getting your job done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. It hasn't been good. I'm not going to make excuses for the staff because we need to do better. And especially like the last thing I want to see here is with us having a bowl game now, us playing some MAC team where we spot them 14 points and give them confidence. And then we end up losing a game looking stupid because we didn't come out to play.
I mean, at this point, the discussion, like Fickell has got to sit down with Tressel. Like, look, what are we doing? Like, what this? There is a systemic problem when you're giving up so many points early to bad teams. That is 100% coaching, and it's got to be fixed. I want to go here, Justin. Let's talk about the overtime a little bit. The fourth down call in overtime. I know you and Ryan agree with me, and I said that. Look, absolutely, I think the right call was to kick, not go for it. And the reason that I feel so, so after, of course, we get the first down, And of course, I'm all cheering, and my wife's like, "You just said you wanted him to kick." I'm like, "Yeah, of course, I'm happy that."
It was a ballsy move, but it was not from an analytics standpoint. He made the wrong choice.
Because the thing is, like, I understand, you're basically giving away the game, right? You're giving away the game if you miss it, and if you make it, and even if you score a touchdown, you're not guaranteeing the game. So it's like the risk reward is really interesting to me. Now, I will give Fickell credit; he has guts. That's important, and that's great, and I'm glad. And I'm glad we got it, and it was right to just give the ball to Braelon Allen. But when you're in a shotgun situation like that, you're not going under center. It is very dicey. We have not been successful at that because we're not going under center. We're not doing the tush push, which we need to. Put Evers in there and have him do that. I don't know what's going on with that. Put Braelon Allen under center and have him do it. But ultimately, I think it was a bad call. And when you look at those analytics, you're giving away the game if you lose, and you're not giving away the game if you win. You're not guaranteeing to win the game. If you were guaranteeing to win the game if you get it, that's different. But you're not even in the end zone yet, let alone stopping the other team from scoring 7. So I think it was a bad call overall. But you got to give Fickell credit, because these are always calls where you're looking back in hindsight 2020 and you're saying, well, if he makes it, it's a great call. If he misses it, it's a horrible call. But you agree with me, right? I mean, that's just something that you shouldn't do.
Here's the deal. In the grand scheme of things, looking at it in a micro level, it's a bad call. In a macro level, and a team that's struggling and sputtering and looking for places to find confidence, that is a play that it's the ultimate coach saying, I believe in you, let's go get this done. And it's not something you look at and you say, this is the smart move, but it's the move that actually probably can galvanize you as a group more than anything else. And I think that's kind of where Fickell was. He's like, I will take the brunt of this if we don't get this. And if we lose, this is on me. I made this call. But if we make this, it's an opportunity for you guys to realize how much confidence I have in you and how much I believe in you guys to go out there and get this done.
Right. I'm going to put this comment back up for Mike, because I know you want to answer this. I'm going to bring this back up. But first, I want to go to Dark Ray. He says, I disagreed with the call to go for it, but I think we all felt if we did kick, Nebraska was going to score a touchdown and win. I actually disagree with you, Dark Ray.
I thought they'd get a field goal and win it.
I think that our defense was playing strong enough to absolutely force them into a field goal situation. And frankly, we have a better kicker than they do. So I think that I actually was really comfortable kicking the ball there, taking the 3 points, and then putting it on the defense who basically hadn't allowed a single point in the second half, other than that their field goal late in the game. But they did a great job from stopping the touchdown there. So I would say that I disagree with you there. But Justin, answer this question for Mike. He wanted to talk about recruits.
Mike, were there any recruits last night at last night's game? Just curious. Yes, there were a ton of kids there, actually. There's actually quite a few guys who are very high in Wisconsin. Tariq Harrier was one of them. Rajeev and I were talking about him offline. He had some good things to say about it. And I no insight here. He's a guy that is very high on Wisconsin, and he kind of had a very cryptic tweet that he put out that hopefully is positive for Wisconsin. I don't know if we'll hear anything on that or not. Hopefully we do, because he would be an amazing pickup for this staff. But there are a ton of guys that are there. The staff has done an excellent job of getting guys in for games to watch. And so they're laying the groundwork for another really good 2025 class. I look forward to it. I think we're going to have I actually think we have a pretty good chance of stepping up from where we were this year, which looks like it's ultimately, hopefully, going to be a top 25 class.
Yeah. For the 22nd consecutive season, the Badgers are going to a bowl game. We're going bowling. It's great. I think this is an excellent tradition that we have. So what does this mean to you, Justin? I mean, how important is it to you that we have the third longest active streak in the country? What does it mean to you to have this consecutive bowl streak, and how do you feel like it affects our recruiting?
I don't know how on a big picture scale it affects looking at the recruits. I can say this. You have young quarterbacks that are on your roster, and you're trying to figure out what you're going into next year with. It's a good evaluation time for Locke. It's a good evaluation time for Evers. And you find out what you're looking forward to next year to decide if you're going to need somebody in the portal. I think they're ideally probably looking for someone in the portal this offseason, because you want somebody that's got experience. That worst case is somebody who is a high quality backup, but can potentially fight for the starter position. And I look at this from the standpoint of you need to figure out what those guys offer. And there's a lot of development that's done. Typically, like the first week of bowl prep is young guys get their reps in, and you get some opportunity to see what they have to offer. They get to get a little bit more experience under their belt. And this whole team needs it. Like, we have so many young guys that are probably going to be relied on next year, especially if there's some guys that move to teams that are just a better fit for them. We're going to have to figure out what we have. But yes, bowl games do matter to an extent. It's probably a bigger deal for development, though, internally, based off what we have.
For me, it's about the emotion of it. I feel very proud of our bowl streak. I said that last year at this time when we became bowl eligible finally, and I thought that I think it's huge for the program. I just love to be able to kind of pound our chest and say, yeah, we're that team that has gone bowling 22 straight years, and we're basically what that means is 6-6 is our floor, and that's a good floor. I mean, it's not good for us, but there's a lot of teams out there that cannot say that. A lot of teams in the Big Ten, a lot of teams that are better than us this year.
That's the longest streak in the Big Ten.
Cannot say that. There's so many teams that can't say their floor is really 6-6, and ours is. And it's been that way for a long, long time. And I think it speaks to the program. It speaks to the culture that Barry built and everything about what we do as a university. And I think it's awesome. And it means a lot to me. I've said many times that bowl games mean a lot to me. Tournaments mean a lot to me in basketball. Big Ten championships mean a lot to me. I love the league. I love what we do. And I want to be a team that is always in the upper echelon talk. I don't want to be a basement team. Now, the last 2 years have been a little tough, but we're still bowling. And there's so many teams who can't say that. So it means a lot to me. And so congratulations to the Badgers for doing this. We're not a very good team this year. We have a lot of holes on our roster. We've got a lot of issues that we've talked about for many, many weeks now. But the way this team stepped up to win that game and become bowl eligible is really important. And now we can look ahead to next week's craziness.
I'm going to read this comment from Slim Lewis here. What Justin is saying makes total sense, but would a back QB come here to be a backup? You're not bringing him in to be a backup. You're going to tell him he's going to get an opportunity to fight for the starting position. And if he doesn't win it, then he's going to be your backup, because unless he's going to transfer out again right away in the spring, which is going to cost him a year, then he's probably not going to do that. So I think you take the risk of you bringing somebody in and you see what they have to offer. And if they're not better than Locke or Evers or whoever, then you have a chance to hopefully have somebody that gives you, at least a high floor for a backup. Another comment I want to throw up here from Ryan Wiley. When is early signing day period? It's actually December 20th this year. So we have a couple of battles that we need to fight to hold on to a few guys. Xavier Lucas, I'm looking at you. You need to stay with Wisconsin and get it done here. Be a cornerback of the future. But yeah, that's the day we're looking at for the early one. That's pretty much the day for college football. Like 95% of recruits are probably going to be locked in at that date.
Yeah. Dark Ray says, do you think Fickell can make us top 15 or maybe even top 10 recruiting? I absolutely think he can, and not necessarily in 1 year. It's going to take him time, but I think Fickell proved that his recruiting prowess in Cincinnati. He's done really well here so far, and I think he absolutely can. It's going to take time to really build up to be a top-notch program in recruiting, but I think he can do it. I'm assuming you agree with me, Justin, or not so much?
I think top 15 for sure. Top 10, looking at the numbers on that, that's really hard to do. If he somehow finds his way in the playoffs and they show some success, there's a chance they do it. Or if they just, like, we have some really stud recruiters on this staff. Colin Hitchler is one of them. Mm-hmm. The guy has been amazing for us, and it looks like he's going to be a terror again this next year. They have to hold on to guys like that, and they have to, now that they've got their legs under them, the staff needs to get going. Like, they're going to get better as it goes on. Like, a top 25 class for a first year staff is incredible.
Absolutely.
So I look forward. I'm hoping next year it's top 20, but it escalates the level of difficulty that it is required going forward. And especially with previously, as we've looked at it, Wisconsin at least needing to offer some level of in-state quality for us to achieve that. They're going to need to see something out of the in-state class to be able to likely get, if you're going to sign a top 10 class, you're probably going to need like 3-4 stars out of Wisconsin.
Yeah. I don't see any reason why you can't do it though.
Yeah.
For weeks, we've been having some bad reaction shows or bad pods talking about football. So we finally get to have some positive weekly superlatives this week.
Weekly superlatives.
Justin, lead us off. Who is your offensive stud of this game? There's a few options here.
I'm going to give it to Braelon Allen. He is the much maligned Braelon Allen, who has taken an absolute beating over his career, especially for me, for not running hard at times when he seems like he's dinged up. He ran really hard in this game, and there wasn't a lot of room to run, but you could tell he was beat up and banged up, and he kept, getting those couple of 1, 2, 3 yard carries that we could get out of him in this game. And it was a lot to ask, quite frankly, because you could tell that he was hurting. And for him to go out there and continue to take a beating, it was really impressive to see him put that level of effort into this game. And it proved how much he cared about winning this one.
Yeah, Braelon Allen did have a good game. I'm not as high on his game than I think that maybe you and Ryan are a little bit. I think he had a fine game. He had 22 carries, 62 yards. He ran hard, yes. I think Aker ran hard too, and I think Aker deserved a few more carries, in my opinion.
I think that's fair.
Because I think that Braelon was beat up and he was hurt. And I'm not saying he didn't run hard, but I feel like having him out there might have been a liability in certain situations, especially from a pass pro perspective. He wasn't out there too much in that. But Aker was running really well. He caught that beautiful touchdown pass. I would have liked to have seen more there. But my offensive stud is Will Pauling. Led the team in receptions and yards again.
Like a number one receiver?
Yep. Well, I mean, he is. He 100% is. No doubt about it. You called it. You were right. Listen, if DK wasn't hurt, I still think he has a battle there because DK is a really good receiver. But yeah, Will Pauling deserves a lot of credit. He seemingly is the only guy that gets consistent separation on his routes. He's a very good route runner, very crisp, clean cuts, doesn't round off routes, and he finds his way to get open. And now he's making good catches too, because that has clearly been an Achilles heel over this team, is the ability to catch the ball properly. So he's done a good job with that. Will Pauling is my guy, 100%. Defensive stud for me. Listen, I'm going to give it to the entire defense in the second half. I just think there's a lot of love to go around. When you lose your starting leader, Hunter Wohler, and he's out the rest of the game coming in after halftime, I think even like sort of the maligned middle linebackers did okay in the second half. But so I'm giving the entire offense, the defensive unit, but I will focus a little bit on Allegro. We've talked about him. He clearly just brings something that the team doesn't have. Now he had a few impactful plays, didn't play an absolute ton. So that's why I'm giving it to the whole unit as my defensive stud.
Yeah, I mean, from a defensive standpoint, I've really been hard on the outside linebackers. I thought both of them actually played pretty well in this game.
Yeah, Getz did play well.
Getz he played really hard in this game, and Peterson had a couple of plays that were big for us in this one, especially in overtime. He's the one that strung out that play, the first down play of overtime. So it was nice to see them get some positive things. I thought Peterson actually played really hard in this game. Like, it's been something I've called him out on several times this season, where it looks like if he doesn't get through on his initial burst, he just gives up. I thought he ran hard and continued after the play more in this game than we've seen in the past. Allegro, I mean, it's just watching him move out on the field is just
so nice,
eye-popping. Like, I don't want to go too much into him because we've already discussed him, but yeah, he's a guy that he's going to add a lot to this team. And I actually do think there's a solid chance that he starts in the bowl game. It wouldn't shock me at all.
I think he's earned it. I mean, because how many times, Justin, have we talked about putting people on the field who are going to play hard and who are going to give it their all every play? Well, he's doing that every time he's in there, whether it's special teams or whether it's on defense. From that linebacker spot, he's doing a great job. His hustle, his play, I mean, everything about what he's doing is great. He's earned the starting role. Give him first team reps with these extra bowl practices, and let's put him in there. And I'm fine if he starts against Minnesota too, because like he's a guy that deserves it. Who's hot, Justin? Stock up right now. Give me some players that we haven't necessarily maybe talked about yet whose stock is up.
Allegro, Pauling. Oh man, Vinny Anthony again. Showing a little game. I'll even put Burrows in there. It was nice to see him come in there and be productive. A couple of plays. Vacos hit another nice kick for us. He's been pretty much consistent across the season. Like he's a stud kicker. I don't know what his injury is. It's clear that they're a little uncomfortable with the idea of him kicking longer, which the guy's got a huge leg. So it's obvious there must be something going on there. Maybe he's got a hamstring or something that's a little tender. Who knows? But looking at this, on the defensive side, man, the guys who I normally would go to would be Hallman, and I thought Hallman had kind of a middling game in this one.
Mhm.
Like some of the tackling wasn't there, and there were a couple of times he did have a nice pass breakup on a ball that they threw a post route where he was tracking the guy really well, but he wasn't as crisp as he's been. So I'm not going to go on him on this one. And Zachman he made a big play at the end of this. Had the pick at the end of overtime. So yeah. And yes, Zach Bartz, I will go out there and I'll say it. There was a Tretch sighting in this one.
Yes,
at the end of regulation. He
caught it on the kickoff return. I mean, no doubt. For me, who's hot is more. I'm going to give Mordecai this because I feel like his stock is up right now. He showed that he has what it takes to win games, and I'll give it to him. I'm also going to go to the O-line a little bit and say Fernie and Malman, I thought, had really good games yesterday. I think that the right side of the line looked really good. You'll notice that a lot of those short runs were on that right side. And I think that I think they played a really good game. And we've talked a lot of smack about the O-line, and rightfully so, with their mistakes and everything they've done this year. But I will say pass protection was good. Mordecai had a lot of time. That O-line deserves a lot of credit. The announcers yesterday on NBC, as you guys said the other day, were really bad, but they seem to think, Longo loves these guys. I'm like, I don't think Longo loves these guys as much as they say.
I don't think the staff in general looks at this roster and thinks that this is a great roster. There's you have a lot of square pegs going into round holes in this one.
Yeah. Mike says Ashcraft is on the rise for me. He did have a nicer game yesterday. He didn't drop the ball, which was good to see. But yeah, there's still a lot of growth for him, which is excellent. And put your superlatives in here. Answers to your superlatives in here. We'll pop them up on the screen as we go. Who's not, Justin? Who's not looking good after yesterday?
Oh man. Let me think here.
I know you're going to say Nelson, but
yeah. I mean, he wasn't terrible in this game. Like, he had the penalty, and other than that, I didn't hear much about him, and I don't think that he was allowing much in terms of pressure. Bortolini struggled in this one.
Yeah.
Like, he was solid as a blocker, and I realized Huntmacher is he is a beast. There's a reason why Wisconsin wanted him back in the day, and we almost got him. That's basically a bear across from him that he's dealing with, and you could tell that he was uncomfortable, and that's why the snaps were as bad as they were. You can kind of track with him when he's got somebody across from him. That's a problem because his snaps follow suit. Like, the games where he snaps poorly, he's got somebody in front of him that he's not comfortable with.
Yeah,
and he typically
they called that out rightfully on the broadcast yesterday. For me, who's not is Muma Jungmeta, a guy that I absolutely loved.
Middle linebackers are rough.
I think that it was really just the way that he played in the 3-4 for Jim Leonard and how he ran that defense and did so well in it. The system now just doesn't suit him very well. And frankly, he's lost a step, or he's lost confidence, or he's lost ability, lost passion. Something isn't right. And when I see him chasing plays towards the sideline and just missing guys left and right, he doesn't take the right angles. He doesn't have the speed. And I honestly just feel like I'd rather see Turner and Chaney in there to start and maybe even put other guys in there, because Muma just doesn't have it for me. And I'm so disappointed with him because I was really hyped on him a lot. I mean, I really was. I've said it many times. Ryan was one of the only guys who was really not big on him, and Ryan was right. I was wrong on this. I just feel like he's had such a bad year, and it's disappointing. It's really disappointing. But
yeah, I think what we're finding is that previous scheme really covered up for the middle linebackers, because other than after the Ohio State game last year, they really became pluses in the system, and it's pretty clear that they're very limited, the guys that we have in that area. That's actually one of the reasons why I feel really confident about this defense and this staff, is that I do think that they know how to find athletes, and that if you get athleticism in this defense, like if we suddenly, like across the board here, especially defensive line, like those middle linebackers in general, the guys they have coming in, I really like as athletes. I really like what we're seeing here. They have a defensive lineman that they're chasing after, who hopefully they can add to this class yet, and Ernest Weiler Jr. If they pull that one, that's going to give you two really good defensive linemen that are coming in that are athletic and have some quickness. And then you have a middle linebacker, in Allegro. You have Anelu Lafayette that's going to be coming in. You have Heiberger, who's going to be coming in, who's another athlete off the edge. And you have guys like Raphael Dunn. Like, there's a lot of speed and athleticism that's going to be added into this defense going forward, which is really going to close a lot of windows for teams. So if guys can play mentally sound, defense is going to be really good in a couple of years.
Yeah. Let's go game MVP. I'm interested to see what your take is on this one. I'm gonna go Mordecai, just because I feel like he really did put the team on his back, and he escaped it when he was dead to rights, going to be sacked. He escaped a couple different times, and I think he kept the game alive for us. I know there were a lot of players that did well, but I think Mordecai deserves this game ball.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I mean, there were time after time in this game when we needed a play to be made. He's either scrambled or threw a pass and got things done. I mean, it was a gritty performance. It wasn't amazing, but he made so many plays that if he doesn't make, we just don't get the job done in this game. So it was he played great.
Yeah. No doubt about that. Quick Big Ten kind of roundup. Nothing major happened yesterday. Obviously, Michigan and Ohio State both won their games. Minnesota, complete trash, as we know. Iowa won the Big Ten West. Congratulations to Iowa for doing what we couldn't do this year. So Iowa will be in the Big Ten Championship against the winner of Michigan and Ohio State next week. Northwestern beat Purdue 23-15. Penn State beat Rutgers.
Good job by Northwestern getting bowl eligible. Yeah, that's incredible. Great job.
Yeah, against a Purdue team that has just continued to falter throughout the year. Before we get into basketball chat, we'll quick take on it's Axe Week. We got Minnesota coming up next week. We're going to do our three big things, of course, in the middle of the week and talk all about that game. But what's something that right off the top of your head, Justin, you're thinking about this week? It's a big week. We have to get this win. We need to shut PJ Fleck up. Honestly, I don't care what happened to the time. Now, this is the time we need to win a game. I really, really want this one.
Yeah, I want this one badly. I want to make a point with this one. I think the defense has to come up with, like, we cannot give up points early in this game. The defense needs to come out locked in, and we need Will Pauling back. I'm concerned about what's going on there. Hopefully we find out that, it's a bum ankle or something. He just needs a little bit of treatment, and he'll be ready to go for this one. But I'm worried about what this offense looks like if we don't have him in this game.
Yeah. Dark Ray says if we let Minnesota score big early, we're going to lose. I obviously hope we don't, because we can't. That certainly can't happen.
For one, it's an away game. You don't want to be
4 weeks in a row. We can't let that happen. But I will say, given what we just saw against Nebraska, I do think that the defense kind of has confidence that even though they have inability to stop teams early, they kind of know that they will figure it out. So kudos to them for that. But Justin, let's talk basketball to end the show here today. Quick overall takes on the Robert Morris game. Anything you want to bring up from that?
The perimeter defense really needs to tighten up. We seem to step slow. We have some guys that really need to work on their defense. Stewart, for the level of athlete that he is, his form as a defender is terrible. Like, it's Ryan and I talked about this a little bit too, and I'm like, he looks like somebody who has never played defense in basketball in his life. And it's frustrating because he's waving his arms around. He's standing up tall. And I'm like, get your butt down. You got to be able to move your feet and don't wave your hands up in the air. You want to get one hand up and the other hand ready to go and move. And I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. And part of the reason he's getting beat is because he's so upright that when guys make that first step, his weight just isn't ready to move and shift to go with the guy. And it's like, these are little things. Like, if he wants to be an NBA guy, nobody's taking you just because you can fire up shots. You have to be able to play defense. Johnny Davis played good defense. That turned him into a lottery pick. Store, if you're going to be as inefficient on offense as Davis was at times, and play no defense and not rebound at the level that Johnny Davis did, you're not getting yourself in the first round. Like, it doesn't matter even if you're a better athlete. So these are the things you need to do if you want to turn yourself into an NBA player. And he has the upside to do it. But yeah, in general, there are guys who are really struggling early. Klesmet, Connor is coming back off injury. I don't know what's going on there. He looks like he's a little stiff yet. Like, I know Connor's not a plus defender, but he looks like a guy who is just not loose yet out there and moving fluidly. And I think that he'll get better as the next week or so goes on here, and hopefully he can start providing a little bit more.
So some of my quick takes from that game. One, the defense is atrocious. I'm sorry. I'm fed up with the defense of this team. I don't know what. Listen, we're about to play Virginia. We're about to play Michigan State. We're about to play Arizona. this is ridiculous. We are letting teams score at will, letting teams penetrate so deep into the lane, untouched, unabated. We're giving up wide open threes because we're collapsing when we shouldn't. We're not staying in front of guys. Connor is a really bad defender. Max Klesman hasn't looked very good. No one's looked good. Store, you mentioned Store. It's just, what in the world is happening defensively? This is not Wisconsin defense, similar to what we've seen from the football team being not Wisconsin defense. Well, this our basketball coach didn't change. I don't know what's going on, but something's got to be fixed because that will be our Achilles heel throughout the year. Offensively, credit to Wall and Crowell for stepping up and playing better inside, shooting a higher field goal percentage from inside 5 feet, which is something that I really wanted to see. But we're not getting open threes, which means spacing really is not very good. And which leads me to my next big question. Let's talk Connor. I mean, you mentioned Connor a little bit. I'm shocked, honestly, what I'm seeing, because from the post-game comments that Greg Gard made, it's not as if Connor is really hurt. He's saying the back injury isn't really affecting him. He's saying he just needs to get back into a rhythm. And obviously his defense is causing him not to play. And he said that. He's like, you got to play defense if you want to play. So it's surprising to me that I think it's almost as if his defense being so bad is getting into his head. It's affecting his offensive game. When he's in there, he's not doing so well because he's so focused on trying to play better defense. He knows that Greg Gard is watching his every move on the defensive side of the floor. And every time he makes another mistake defensively, like he did a couple times in this game, he gets pulled right away. Connor coming into this year was a big portion, a big part of our offense, a huge part of our offense last year. And someone that we really thought we needed to see improvement from and take that next step up. But frankly, I mean, all we've seen so far is, yes, he has a back injury, but even without that, something's just not right there. And I'm concerned about where Connor goes this year when you're looking at guys like Blackwell stepping up and where does he get his playing time? And are we going to see the Connor of last year?
Well, I mean, if Klesma continues to play like this, Connor will just take his minutes. If he provides any scoring, because Klesma has not played well. I talked about this with a couple of people with regards to Blackwell, and I said that one of the reasons that he is a problem for guys like Klesma and Connor is they can't mimic what he does. And that's he can get to the rim when he wants to, which is something that neither Klesma or Connor can do with any regularity. And because of that, Blackwell gives you more efficiency and gives you easier shots than what either of those guys can provide. And because of that, it makes them – they have to be shooting at a high level and playing good defense in order to be able to kind of stay with him. I really think Blackwell is a guy, if his efficiency doesn't take a tumble here, he's the guy you need to start because he right now, offensively, between him and Chucky, those are the two most efficient players you have on offense. And Chucky has proven that he tends to tail off after a hot streak. I don't know if Blackwell will or not, but I trust that Blackwell, given his size and strength, looks like he's going to be a guy with his burst that can consistently get to the rim.
I would actually like to see. I'm okay with Blackwell not starting. I want him to play more minutes, though. There's no reason why he should play less.
He does need to play more. He's way too efficient offensively and too good of a defender not to be playing.
Right. So I think I'm fine Blackwell not starting. I actually would rather see Connor come in there right now, only because I feel like maybe he can get out of this funk by starting and getting some early shots and being in the game right away versus coming in and trying to find his way into the game. Let him take a few lumps. Let him take a few shots early and see if he can get a shot down, even scoring on a layup or some mid-range jumper. He needs to get going because I think as Connor goes, this team's going to go, and he's a big part of what we're doing. So I'd like to see that happen. A couple comments here. Dark Ray says, I'm worried Nolan Winter will become the next Nate Reavers. Don't worry about Nolan Winter. In my opinion, I think he's fantastic. Mike says, we need Winter, Rajeev. Yes, we certainly do. Will says, Bill Woj says, hey, guys, good to see you, Bill. Mike says, a backcourt of Free Tag and Blackwell next year is going to be fun, guys. Absolutely. I'm fine with what I'm seeing overall, but this comment is one I wanted to put up there as well. Mars says, team is more athletic, but lacks discipline. Yeah, 100%. In my opinion, the right take. I mean, we are more athletic, but defensively, boy, the discipline's really bad. And there's also just seemingly are just not good enough.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that are at play there. Number one, we're playing faster, which means it's going to be more frenetic. Guys are going to be kind of out of control a little bit more. Like you're never going to be as controlled the faster you go as you are playing slow. And because of that, Wisconsin would it's a lot easier to lock in on defense and be ready to go when the ball's not frenetically moving back and forth up the court. Now, it hasn't been terrible in terms of the pace of play where it's been like ungodly and we've just been struggling. But we have guys who are going to be a problem. This is where I'll push back on the Connor getting out there and starting. I don't think you can start him with Storr because that's two guys that are below average defenders that you're throwing out there in your starting lineup, and you're just begging for teams to abuse you and get you into and isolate those two guys and just attack at will.
I feel like we're already getting abused, Justin. Like I feel like I'd rather have more offense if we're going to.
You're not wrong there. And
you know,
we'll get into the other thing I will say is, for the love of God, play Winter over Gilmore. I'll take my lumps. I'll take my lumps early with Winter so that he's ready by the end of the season to play a big role come tournament time. Than I will with Gilmore, who after he gave the layup in the Providence game, I was about ready to be like, your one thing that you're out there for is to stop that guy from getting a layup, and you just jump out of the way because you don't want to draw a foul. Get the foul. Stop the layup. Like, come on, man. Like, it's not like we're worried about you fouling out of the game. Like, oh no, we lost Gilmore. What are we going to do to make up for his 1.2 points per game or whatever he's averaging offensively?
If that, I mean, geez. All right, guys, to wrap it up, let's talk a little more about this basketball game coming up. So first of all, new predictions, Justin, for the Big Ten. You've seen the Badgers for a couple weeks now. Just tell me where you think they're going to finish, and then also let's lead in and give me your prediction and talk a little bit about the Virginia game.
I mean, the Big Ten looks bad this year. Mm-hmm. I don't take too much away from Wisconsin at this point. I think the defense will get better as the season goes on. It's not going to be good, but I think it will be average. And if they continue to be able to score the way they have been scoring, it will be enough for them to be an above average team. And I think they can still finish top 5 in the Big Ten because I think the Big Ten just stinks this year. Like, it's not very good. Even Michigan State's losing games. So you have Purdue effectively and everybody else. And if that's the case, then it's up for grabs. Like, there's nobody that I'm really impressed with that I've seen in any of these other games. And Wisconsin looks like we can score with just about anybody. So we're not going to probably play with the top 10 teams in the country scoring wise, but I think everybody else we can hang with. We're going to take some lumps in games where we look ugly, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm a little bit concerned about the Big Ten as far as top 5, and now only because of the defense. I think that we're going to, if we continue to get abused defensively, I think that's going to be problematic for us as we get into the conference slate. There are talented teams. There are a lot of athletes in this conference, and while we might not, no one's looking great so far. When we play them, they're going to be better, and they're going to be better than a team like Robert Morris. And I mean, we need to be able to stop teams if we're going to be competitive. But what are you looking for this week? Virginia's tomorrow, 5 p.m. Central Time. Obviously, the return of Mr. Tony Bennett to play Wisconsin. Of course, we love him. But what are your thoughts on the Virginia game to end things up today?
I don't know what to make. I'll be quite honest. I have not watched any Virginia basketball so far this season. If they play like the previous Virginia teams that I've seen, one of the issues that I didn't like with Wisconsin style and which I don't like about Virginia is they play so slow that it's really hard to get into an offensive rhythm. And if that's a team that's playing super slow again, Wisconsin needs to take that and run with it and try to continue to keep up with this offensive rhythm that we have going. Because if they're going to force a slow half-court offense from Virginia, push it and take what you can get and let Virginia shoot themselves in the foot by having these bad, disjointed offensive sets that they're running where they can't score.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if they're going to do that or not, but we'll see. That's the history that I've seen from Virginia a lot of times.
Yeah, for me, I also haven't watched Virginia this year, but for me, it's like what you're going to be getting from a Tony Bennett team. You're going to be getting a lot of hustle, a lot of grit, a lot of effort, and determination. We're going to need to match that, and it means that hustle plays have to be us. We need to get good rebounds. We can't let them out rebound us. We got to get dirty. We got to get the balls on the floor, loose balls, everything. We have to play and get the hustle plays and win those battles. And it's going to be. There's going to be free throw shooting is going to be huge this game. So I don't want to see, guys going 2 of 6 and stuff like that. And we really need to improve our free throw shooting. they're free throws. We got to take advantage of them and actually make them free for us rather than being a hindrance and a liability for us. And we know they're going to be strong defensively, so we can't have 9-minute scoring droughts. This is something that can plague this team year in and year out. And once again, it seems like it's going to be an issue for us. And that doesn't mean that I want AJ Storr to chuck something up and take a bad shot. It means let's do what we do best and get the ball inside, kick out to open shooters, space the ball well, move the ball around. I don't know what to expect from this game. We have a very, very tough schedule. We're 500 now. We're 2-2. I think it's going to be difficult to keep a really good record in the non-conference because there's so many good opponents. I hope it's a good game, and I hope we can see something that we're proud of. I think ultimately is most important.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. One note on Storr there. He's been a bit of a ball stopper so far this season. Once the ball's in his hands, it does not come back out, and that's something that has to change.
Need that.
No, he forces some bad shots because of it. And that's the biggest difference between him and Blackwell is Blackwell does not force that. If it's not there, he just moves along and passes it on and goes. And that will probably change a little bit as Blackwell becomes more confident and plays more. But I don't you can just see his instincts are good. And Storr, I question the instincts a little bit because he's so used to being physically superior to whoever's across from him that he kind of plays like he thinks that he can get away with things that he probably shouldn't in the grand scheme of things. He's not very efficient so far this year. And if he can be really efficient, he's our best player because athletically, yes, he's the best athlete we have, but it's got to be good shots within the offense for him to be able to do it. And there's a time and a place for you to take a shot that a lot of the times the defense is almost baiting him into bad shots and he's just taking it.
We'll end it on this comment. Nick Lee says, I've watched Virginia. They're my alma mater. They're playing a bit more up-tempo, but still a classic Virginia team. They've got really good athletes on the wings, and I hope we're able to contain them. Well, that doesn't sound like something that we're going to be able to contain, Nick. I'm a little bit concerned about athletic wings that don't really do well for us. Justin, final thoughts tonight.
Yeah, big victory for Wisconsin. Let's get another one. It's Axe Week. Let's go tear down Minnesota and take away their bowl eligibility. So that's what I want to see. I want to see PJ Fleck have to explain how he had a losing season in year 7.
Absolutely, man. That is my final thought as well. It's about it's Axe Week. Whatever happened up to now, it's been a bad year. It's been up and down. We can still finish 7-5, by the way, with a win this week, which is ultimately
assures us of a winning season.
Right. And I feel like, you know what? That's solid. We've had a lot of ups and downs. None of it matters right now. Just beat PJ Fleck in Minnesota. They've had the axe. It's unacceptable that this axe is not in our possession. It's been like that for so long. So we really need to get this done. That is by far the most important thing. I cannot wait for the game. I just want to beat Minnesota. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back on Wednesday with our 3 big things going into the Minnesota game. We'll also talk a little bit about what we saw in the Virginia-Wisconsin game. Go Badgers tomorrow night. And as always, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.